Welcome to my video on composite area and perimeter using rectangles, triangles, circles, and semicircles. So we need to look at a couple formulas that you are going to need in order to solve these problems. So the first one is the circle formula, and the formula for a circle is area equals pi times radius squared. And that will be found on your formula sheet. Now the next formula is a semicircle. So think about it. If you have a whole circle as pi r squared, a semicircle would be half that. So the formula looks like this. A equals 1/2 pi r squared. So here is our composite figure, and the first thing you need to do is kind of break it apart, and we see a semicircle here, a semicircle here, and I see a square here. So we're going to find the area. So the first one I'm going to do is area of a circle right here. So we're going to do, and I'm actually going to do area of a semicircle because I have a semicircle here and here. Now technically if I wanted to, I could, because these are the same, I could put them together to make a whole circle, but I'm going to show you, since they're individually semicircles, I'm going to show you how to do it that way. So we're going to do A equals 1/2 times pi times radius squared. And when I look at the circle, I notice that this is 2 inches. That's the diameter. So the radius would actually be 1. So we can put that in right here. Whoops. So the radius is 1. So we're going to do 1/2 times pi, which is 3.14, times 1 squared. And when I calculate that, I get 1.575. Okay, now because this is the same, I'm going to have another 1.575. And I'm not going to calculate it because it's calculated the same way. And then I also have area of a square, so it's side squared. And the side is 2 inches, so we're going to do 2 squared, or 2 times 2, which is 4. Now I'm going to take these 3 parts and add them up because I had 3 shapes here. I had a square, a semicircle, and another semicircle. So we're going to do 1.575 plus 1.575 plus 4. And when I add that up, I get 7 15/100 inches squared. Okay, I could round that to the nearest tenth and get 7.2, but for now I'm just going to leave it like this because it didn't say to round. Okay. All right, let's look at how do we find the perimeter when we have a semicircle. So remember, perimeter formula for a circle is C equals pi times d. Now remember though, that's for a whole circle. So if I have a semicircle, then that would be, I would have to take half pi times d. So let's look here. We need to count the sides, and we're going to say this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and since this is a square, I know that this is 2 and that this is also 2. Okay, so now we're going to use the circumference formula, but it's a semicircle, so I have to do C equals 1/2 pi times d. I'm going to do 1/2 times 3.14, and then since this goes all the way across, I know the diameter is 2. So when I multiply that together, I get 3.14. Now I know that, and I could put 3.14 up here, and I know I have another one it's the same because the diameter is 2, so this is also 3.14, so I'm going to put that here. And then now I'm going to count them all up. So we're going to start here. We're going to say 2 plus 3.14 plus 3.14 plus 2. And I remember I have 4 sides in the beginning, so I have 4 numbers. And I'm going to say 10.28 just inches. And if I rounded to the nearest tenth, it would be 10.3 inches. Okay, let's look at the back and look at some more examples. So number 1. Okay, we need to find area and perimeter, so we're going to do area first. And I notice it's already split up for me. I have 2 semicircles and I have a rectangle. Okay, so, and I notice that both semicircles are going to be the same. Okay, now what I also see is that the radius, because it only goes halfway across the circle, it's showing this from here to here is 32. So that means the diameter would be 64, and I may need that later on. So we could put 64 here. Okay, now I'm going to do area formula for a semicircle and then area formula for a rectangle. So let's do the semicircle first. We have A equals 1/2. It's a semicircle, pi r squared. We were given the radius, and that is 32. So 1/2 times pi, which is 3.14, times 32 squared. And that will give us 1,607 and 68 hundredths. Okay, now I'm going to need another one here. Okay, I'm not going to do the formula again. And I need another one because there's 2 semicircles. And then I'm going to do area of a rectangle. Now I said this before, but you could technically count these together and just use the area of a circle formula without the 1/2. Okay, but I chose to do half because I knew I had 2 semicircles and I just did it twice. So back to the rectangle, area equals length times width. Now remember, it's not 32 all the way across, it's 64 all the way across. And then the width is 100. So I'm going to do 64 times 100. And that will give me 6,400. And now what I need to do is I need to combine these 3 parts. So I need to add both semicircles, and I need to add the rectangle, which is 6,400. When I add that up, I get 9,615 and 36 hundredths, and my label is meters squared because this is area. If I rounded to the nearest tenth, then it would be 0.4. Now let's look at the perimeter. Okay, now we want to count the sides, so we're going to have to use circumference here. So 1, we got this, 2, 3, and 4. And if this is 100, we know that this is also 100. Okay, so now we need to calculate the circumference of a semicircle. Now remember, circumference of a circle is pi times d. Since we have a semicircle, it's 1/2 pi times d. So we're going to do 1/2 times 3.14. And remember that the diameter is 64. And so we have 100.4 100.48, and this is 100.48, and since the other one is the same size semicircle, this is also 148 hundredths. Now I'm going to add my 4 parts. So we have this one, we have this one, and this one. So we're going to do 100.48 plus 100 plus 100.48 plus 100. And when I add all those up, I get 496 hundredths. If I rounded to the nearest tenth, I would actually get 401 whole. So we're going to label this meters for perimeter. Okay, let's look at example number 2. We're going to do the area first. So I have a triangle and a semicircle. So I look here, I have a base and a height, so we are good to go. And for the area of a semicircle, we're going to need the radius. And I know that this whole part is 10, so that's telling me the diameter is 10. That means the radius is 5. So let's do the triangle first. Area equals 1/2 base times height. We're going to do 1/2 6 times 8, and that will give me 24. And now I have to do the semicircle. Whoops, so this is area. And because it's a semicircle, I have to take 1/2 pi times radius squared. So we're going to do 1/2 times 3.14. And remember, the radius is 5, not 10, and I got a square. So when I calculate that out, I get 39.25. And remember, I want to add these together, so I'm just going to put a plus sign in between this. So 24 plus 39.25 will give me 63 and 25 hundredths feet squared. Or if you round it to the nearest tenth, it would be 63.3. Okay, let's look at the perimeter. So we have one side here, 2 and 3 sides. So we have that one, and we need to find this one. Since it's a semicircle, we're going to need to use circumference for perimeter, and we have to put 1/2 in it because it's a semicircle. So 1/2 pi times d. So we're going to do 1/2 times 3.14 times the diameter, which is 10, and that gives me 15 7/10. So now we're going to label this 15 7/10, and we're going to do 6 plus 8 plus 15 7/10. So 6 plus 8 plus 15 7/10. And when I add that up, I get 29 7/10, and we're going to label it feet. Okay, let's look at one last example. Okay, and the first thing we want to do here is separate it, break it apart. So I'm going to draw a dotted line here because I see a semicircle there. Okay, and if this is 5, that means this is also 5. If this is 10, this is also 10. Okay, so now we're going to do the area formulas. I see a semicircle, I see a rectangle, and I see a triangle. So let's do the semicircle first. Start as far to the left as you can. And since it's a semicircle, I've got to put 1/2 pi times radius squared. Oops. We're going to do 1/2 times 3.14 times. Now look, this is the diameter. So if I want the radius, I have to cut the diameter in half. So the radius is 2.5, or 2 5/10. And I have to square it. Okay, when I calculate that out, I get 9 and 8,125 10,000ths. Okay, now, and I can write that inside here. Now we have the rectangle, we have a length of 10 and a width of 5, so we're going to do length times width. So 10 times 5 is 50. And now we have, and we can put 50 in here. And now we have a triangle. So we can do 1/2 base times height. Now look here. We have a base, but we don't have a height. Okay? We know that the base is 5. So if I want the base of this part here, I got to take half of 5, which is 2.5. So this is 2.5 and this is 2.5. So now I've got to use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out the height. So we're going to come over here and do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We're going to call this a, and I don't have anything, so we're going to say a squared. Plus my b is 2.5, so we're going to do 2.5 squared. And my c is my hypotenuse. We're going to call that 8 squared. So a squared plus 6.25 equals 8 squared, or 8 times 8, which is 64. Now, I can circle my variable and draw my t. We're going to subtract 6.25 from both sides so we can get a squared by itself. 64 minus 6.25 is 57/7500ths. And now to get rid of the squared, I have to take the square root. So that means that a is 7 6/10. Okay, so now I'm going to use the base and the height to figure out the area of a triangle. So we're going to do 1/2. The whole base is 5, and the height is 7 6/10. And when I multiply that out, I get 19 whole. Now I need to combine those to figure out the composite area. So we're going to add those three numbers up. And I can put 19 in here to show that this is the area. And when I add those up, I get 78 and 8,125 10,000ths. And we're going to call it inches squared. If I rounded to the nearest tenth, it would be 78 and 8/10. Okay. And now the last part is the perimeter. So we have this, we need this, we have this, we have this, and we have this. So we need to use circumference to figure out the perimeter of this semicircle. Now remember, circumference is pi times d, but since it's a semicircle, I have to do 1/2 pi times d. We're going to do 1/2 times 3.14 times the diameter, which is 5. And I get 7 825 thousandths. So we can label that out here. Circle it. And I'm going to start here and start adding my sides. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So add those up and you get 43 825 thousandths inches. if I rounded that to the nearest tenth, it'd be 43 and 8/10. Okay, that concludes our notes on composite area and perimeter using circles and semicircles. I hope you have a great day.